Goes in to talk to the barber in Jackson, Louisiana. He needs a haircut like I need a haircut, okay? And barbers notice things like that. You know, so the barber comes out to see who this guy is, and he notices there's a woman sitting on the front seat of the car. And he also tells him, hey, you want a job around here, you got to go talk to Reeves Morgan. He's the state representative. He's got big influence with this hospital here. So Lee drives out. Again, leaving a breadcrumb trail, goes talks to Reeves Morgan. And Mary, Reeves' daughter, who's a USL student at the time, comes out on the porch and looks at the car and sees a woman sitting on the front seat of the car. So when Garrison starts investigating this and find these things, they say, oh, that's not hard, that's Marina. So they go and ask Marina, hey Marina, is that you? She said, no, not me. She said, I never went up there. So the conclusion of the Garrison trial is they're saying there's a woman traveling with Lee Oswald in southeast Louisiana who is not his wife, and we don't know who she is, and we'd like to bring her in here to ask her questions, but we can't find her. Okay? This happens, this trip, Judy going up, doing the blood test, yes, it worked. The guy's going to die in 28 days. Okay? That happens on August 31st. But Lee doesn't leave New Orleans for this all-day event until 11 o'clock. He had something to do in the morning. When he gets back, it is 10 o'clock at night on August 31st. And at 11 o'clock at night on August 31st, somebody breaks into Mary Sherman's apartment. But there's no danger to Mary. Somebody drove Mary to the airport that morning and put her on a plane for London. She is not there, and I now have the police report that says they stole $35 in cash and negotiables. They stole $350 worth of jewelry. They sold $350 worth of furs, and they stole, I'm going to put this in 2014 dollars so we can all follow this. They stole $12,000 worth of miscellaneous. So I sent Judy an email. I said, Judy, you know, you were in Mary's apartment. What was in Mary's apartment that would have been worth $12,500? That was not money in furs and jewelry. She sends me back a list of scientific equipment, including an oil immersion microscope, that's about $8,000, autoclaves, and these wheels that spin around to keep the viruses alive in the test tubes, and it all adds up to $12,500. I think that's a new piece of this puzzle. And where did Mary Sherman go? She went to London, England for a month. Well, no. You remember that linear particle accelerator pointing the beam down at the Platinum Pyramid? The one in Dr. Mary's monkey, the diagram you see there, is in Oxford, England, 47 miles from Big Ben in London. The other one is on Chapatula Street in New Orleans. Chapatula's in Henry Clay. So what you've got is two linear particle accelerators pointing their beams at platinum pyramids to split the beams into equal doses, and there's two of them on the planet, and Mary Sherman is shuttling back and forth between the two. And so when I say Mary Sherman was an expert in radiation, I really mean it. She was not only published in the area, not only bringing it into medicine, but she was working with Enrico Fermi at the University of Chicago on this at the time. Enrico Fermi is the guy that filed the patent on nuclear power. He's considered by many, along with Zeiler, to be the father of the atomic bomb. Oh, and let's not forget Harold Urey, which he comes into the thing all along. So this is just one document, one piece of information that I got from an inbound, from a radio interview. And what's different today is I at least have the puzzle to put the piece into, at least to try to interpret it. Another thing that happened, there's somebody in this room who told me this story. He was talking to a doctor at Oshner Clinic who was selling him a boat, actually. And they were talking, and he asked him about the Mary Sherman murder. And this guy, his name's Gordon McFarland, he's dead now. He was in the newspaper yesterday, which is why I don't feel a problem with bringing his name up. The Times or Novo, Times Picayune already did it, okay? But he said, oh, everybody knows that Stanley Stump murdered Mary Sherman. Everybody. Like including the homicide detectives? I read the homicide reports from '64, and Stanley's name is not in any of the homicide reports. So what can you tell me about Stanley? Well, I heard rumors. You know, the problem with rumors, half of them are true. And you don't know which half are true until you get into it. And the rumor said that Stanley had mental problems, and that he was seeing a psychiatrist and he committed suicide. This all happened a couple of months after Mary Sherman's death. Well, that's wonderful. We got suicide, a couple of months. Don't worry about it. This guy's gone. So I said, well, wait a second. Who is Stanley Stump? I mean, you know, let's get the backstory on this. Well, there's Stump Boulevard in Gretna. Y'all heard about that? Okay? Well, that's his family. All right? And he went to Newman, and he was a star athlete at Newman. He went to Tulane. He lettered in basketball for 3 years, and lettered in baseball for 3 years. I've read the sports articles on him. He was a successful athlete from a well-to-do family in New Orleans. And he went to medical school. And he became Mary Sherman's orthopedic resident. Meanwhile, he's working at Oshner Clinic in the ER. Well, so when did Stanley really die? I mean, I start to focus on this particular piece of information because I can't find out anything about his death unless I know when he died. So I called Don Dubuque over here. I said, Don, would you please do me a favor and let me talk to your audience? I have a question I want to ask them. And I said, if anybody out there knows anything about Stanley Stump, please contact the station. Which they did. The next day, this guy, Robert, said, hey, I used to live across the street from this guy. And he starts telling me the story of Stanley Stump and how Stanley dies. Like drug overdose, suicide kind of thing. And how his cousin buys Stanley's house, and they go into Stanley's house and they find a football signed by the New Orleans Saints. And they find a telegram written to one of the New Orleans Saints who signed the football. The telegram is from Stanley's wife saying, sorry, Stanley died yesterday. This is December 21st, 1977, 13 and a half years after Mary died. So they're asking us to believe that everybody in gossipy New Orleans knew that Stanley Stump was the likely suspect in the murder of Mary Sherman for 13 and a half years, and nobody did anything about it. Well, why not? Was somebody protecting Stanley? The other story that intersects with this, and again, I'm just trying to piece the puzzle together. If you work in an emergency room, you basically, at least in those days, you work 24 on, 24 off, and on your day off, you did not come into the emergency room. Okay? I mean, can we kind of agree that's normal behavior, okay? But on the night of Mary Sherman's murder, which is, by the way, actually before midnight, they found her body in the morning on the 21st, but it's really the 20th, in my opinion. Stanley suddenly shows up in the emergency room at Oshner Clinic. He's in his civvies, his casual clothes. He's not dressed in scrubs. He looks like he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. He goes into the back very quickly, gets something in the back, and leaves without talking to anybody. Everybody goes, wow, that's pretty strange. What do they keep in the back of emergency rooms that they might have needed to transport Mary Sherman from the U.S. Public Health Service hospital back to her apartment? A body bag, that's right. Which leads us to our next clue. They found a pair of blood-stained women's gloves in Mary's laundry hamper. Small woman. Did the small woman carry the 136 pounds of dead weight from the car up to the stairs, open the door with one hand? No, there had to be more than one person doing this. Was Stanley strong enough to carry Mary Sherman's body up the stairs and into her apartment? I think he was, okay? Now, nobody knows whether Stanley was involved or not, but there's starting to be pieces come in to say he may have been part of the relocation of Mary Sherman's body from the U.S. Public Health Service to her apartment. A lot of what I've just told you is in this new version, which has new 25 pages on it. There are some other things in here that I want to call your attention to, such as a memo from J. Edgar Hoover telling his agents not to investigate the Mary Sherman murder. This memo is dated July 31st, 1964, 10 days after her thing was discovered, her death was discovered. His reason, as stated in the memo, was jurisdiction. Now think this one through for a minute. If Mary Sherman was electrocuted, and for those who don't know what happened to Mary Sherman, her entire right arm and rib cage was disintegrated by heat. Not kind of burned, disintegrated. And immediately next to that burn was her unburned hair. Now we've all burned hair on our forearms around the stove because it's the easiest thing on the body to burn. And bones technically don't even burn, they just dehydrate. And when they're finished at cremation, they burned off all the soft tissue, and they have bones and teeth left, and they grind them up and say, here are your ashes. Okay? So 1600 degrees for 2.5 hours will not burn bones. You can burn bones at about 5,000 degrees, or disintegrate. Okay? And that's what happens to Mary Sherman here. But you can see her liver. Her liver's not burned. The skin all around this black carbonized stump is not burned. So it is my conclusion, there are people who agree with me, people who don't, but it's my conclusion that Mary Sherman was electrocuted by a very powerful electrical charge from a 5 million volt linear particle accelerator, which was installed upon the grounds of the U.S. Public Health Service Hospital on Henry Clay and Tchoupitoulas. In fact, today I had a guy, we did this full funeral for Mary Sherman up on St. Charles this morning, and he came up and said, I used to be a contractor who worked on that campus, and when I heard about all this, I got the guy in charge of the campus to let me go in the building and look. And he said, there was so much wiring in that building, these were his exact words, you could have run a small city off of the amount of electricity in there. Moving Mary Sherman's body from the U.S. Public Health Service to her apartment changed the jurisdiction from FBI to NOPD. But that's really not why I'm telling you about this memo. There's something on page 2 that's even more important. Now, this is not signed by J. Edgar Hoover because he was out of town and dictated the response, and he wasn't sitting there in his office signing things. So Hoover himself might not even have been aware that there was this note on page 2. And the note says the victim is Dr. Mary Sherman, internationally renowned cancer researcher and orthopedic surgeon. Her right arm and rib cage were burned away. Somebody's name was found in her address book. And that name is redacted. Now this is almost verbatim off of this thing. I mean, look at the position of this information. They just said her right arm and rib cage is burned off, and they found a name in her address book. Well, of course that's where you find names. That's where people put them, okay? But why are you telling the head of the FBI, oh my gosh, we just found this name in this address book?
Sir,
Yes, Sal?
I'd like to say a word on behalf of the New Orleans Police Department. My name is Detective Haslam.
Okay, this man is a retired homicide detective. And by the way, I think the NOPD did a good job on this, but Sal's got the floor here for a minute to make some comments.
I don't think that's what you mean, that we did a good job. My name is Detective Pascal Saladino. Homicide detective. Out of 39 years of service, 25 years. Have you seen it all? According to Major Morris, everything with cream cheese on the moon. No? I'm sorry, but with an honorable disposition, I disagree with the statement this man made recently. Because he's acting on hearsay, and I'm acting on lack of evidence. And we're both in the same boat. Whoever killed that woman came in the early morning hours with no forced entry to the unit, the apartment. He gave her 32 to 35 stab wounds with a 4-inch blade. Then he set the place on fire. The argument is by electronics that caused major damage to the body or fire that the culprit may have committed. The firemen came in answering to a fire active, and 2 hoses did a number for evidence in that apartment. I tried to interview the policeman. Bear with me, I'm a sick man, and I have to wince periodically, but I won't take too much time. And I was assigned a case in 1980 by Dr. Monroe Sanders. He said, find out who killed this woman, because it's a heated case, and to us that was a very important case. But nevertheless, she was murdered. I said, my theory is when I got through, I went to see the old timer. And I said, Dr. Sanders, whoever killed that woman got in easy, no forced entry. He gave her 34 to 35 stab wounds, defensive wounds. He laid it into her, in the heart, in the liver. There was no chance of survival. According to the autopsy that Dr. Samuel signed, he says she died from stab wounds. The fire didn't do it because there was no soot in the lungs. Now that would be in favor to the electronic report. But he has no proof of that. It's only a theory. We don't know that that really happened. Could it have happened? Yes, it could have happened. Whoever it was also took her car. It was found on Chestnut Street, a predominantly all-black neighborhood. The keys were thrown up on a neutral ground nearby. I'm not saying it was a black man, but I'm saying it was a burglar that probably came in. But I can't prove it. Talk to the policeman, Dr. Samuel said, and I tried. But they were all dead by the time I got to interviewing 6 or 7 of them. Haywood, as he said, Haywood picked the dust a long time ago. They were all dead. The only 2 that's living that know something about the case now is Lawrence Casanova, a major, retired from the New Orleans Police Department. And yours truly, Detective Pascal Saladino. And I tried. And I had an excellent record up there. Over 600 cases in those years. And I got all but 74 left up there for somebody else to solve. Whoever killed that woman really wanted her dead fast. Now, I wish him well, and I won't take more of his time because this is his seminar. But I have to defend something I lived by for 39 years, and that's the New Orleans Police Department. Doesn't owe me a thing. I owe everything to the department. Am I a company man? Yes, so be Bob. I believe in being loyal to the people you work for. I found no evidence that could bring this to a conclusion. It's too old, great. And in the words of Lawrence Casanova, maybe we'll never solve it, we'll never find out who killed that woman. But she had excellent credentials. She had a lot of knowledge about many things this gentleman says he had. I don't doubt any of it. I was unable to do a good, thorough background. There's over 60-something people. When you get a dead case file and you're not on a scene from its originality, you have to go over everything in that report. And that report is so heavy, I can't even carry it. That's one portion of it my son has. He's handicapped, please excuse me. But I brought it, just so I can back up my word. But I don't have to. This is only a seminar get-together, and we try to learn as much as we can. If someday there is proof, maybe I'll accept it. But there's an old saying, Lieutenant O'Donnell used to always say it. If you know what happens, prove it. If it's a theory, accept what's there. And once there's a question mark. And the police department, I don't know what's his attitude, did the best they could. But unfortunately, all 6 or 8 of them all didn't do it.
Thank you, Sal. As I said earlier, Frank Hayward told me at home, made sure that I knew that he had solved 103 of the 107 homicides assigned to him. We talked for about an hour. Hayward said to me, in those days we were more into motive than forensics. In the autopsy report, signed by Monroe Samuels, it points to 2 wounds. One was a puncture wound of the heart